I studied finance back when I was at UCF. I eventually landed at Google in people operations and specifically people development, where I'm a program manager focused on helping leaders in the company, managers, directors, vice presidents, helping them develop themselves. So attending trainings, and I focus a lot on facilitation and helping the leaders at Google learn and continue to develop themselves to lead their organizations, their teams, and those around them. And I'm joined by Jonathan, who's here today.
I am Jonathan Gamble. I am also a UCF alum. I have also graduated a while ago. So I studied computer science while I was here. And I went on to get my master's at Kennesaw State University in software engineering. So I do more of the coding and all that stuff, more of what you probably think of Google does. I work within Core, so Google Core is essentially like our infrastructure pillar of Google. So we build tools, infrastructure, pipelines for other Googlers. So my job is to make other Googlers' jobs easier in that sense. Specifically right now, I'm working on AI, obviously artificial intelligence, but artificial intelligence based, I would say, infrastructure related to design. So helping our different 1P products like YouTube, Gmail, Drive, their designers migrate and push to the latest and greatest of design. So for those who know, I see some iPhone 17s out there, so liquid glass, things like that. As all these apps are migrating to the latest and greatest, we are helping them do that quicker with the help of AI. So that's kind of my day-to-day.
Thanks, Jonathan. And as you can probably tell, I help in my role helping Googlers develop themselves. Jonathan helps on internal tools at Google. The company's so big that we have full-time positions for improving the company within. So there's so many positions that we'll talk through. But when it comes to technical expertise, Jonathan's going to be here to walk us through a lot of that good stuff. And with all those roles available at Google, hundreds and thousands of employees that we have, despite whatever role we're in, we're all really tied to one mission, and that's to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And we do that by many ways, but number one, it's by hiring diverse candidates that have diverse backgrounds, that bring different approaches, different perspectives to the table. And we're proud of that, to have a diverse workforce, because we know that our users are diverse. We're serving billions of users really around the world. And so that's one way we do it. Another way is by empowering people. We create the conditions for people to do their best work. Yes, we have slides at Google, rock climbing walls. I once found a half pipe in one of the buildings. It's really interesting to work there. But if you ask anyone what their favorite thing about working at Google is, they'll say it's the people. It's a great culture that we have, a culture around learning, around collaboration, around always trying to solve a problem, not just bring a problem, but try to solve it, bring a solution. And knowing that any initiative, as small as it is, could become a company-wide initiative itself. We build for everyone, pushing the boundaries of technology, and we partner for impact. We partner a lot with nonprofits, communities, and really try to put ourselves in the user's shoes. So that's a little bit about the background of Google. We're going to be here to answer any questions you have, but at this point, we're going to get into the interview process, the full time.
Absolutely. So where are my seniors at in here? I know there's quite a few this morning. There's quite a few. All right, so I know this is probably what you're came to see. You want to know how to get that full-time position. So we'll walk through it a bit. So again, for you who was here earlier, this is the spoiler alert about the interview process, but we can get into it again. Feel free to ask questions as we go. We'll stop the questions as well, but again, we're here for you, so we can answer those questions. All right, so the interview process kind of starts off with an online coding assessment and a survey. I'm sure some of you, anyone who's done an interview has done an online coding assessment where they send you a link. You got a certain amount of time to solve it, finish it, and send it back. After that, after you kill that, which we know you will, you'll go to the 4 virtual interviews. So out of those 4, there's going to be 1 interview that's specifically related to team attributes and leadership. What we call that is Googliness. Like, are you a good person? Or how's your behavioral skills? Are you a jerk? Are you not? Like, those things are kind of important to the general culture, like we talked about, keeping Google, feeling like Google. And then, obviously, we care about your technical skills, so that's where the other three, interviews will come from. So after you kill all of those interviews, which because after you do this, you're gonna be ready for those, you will go to product area match and, final approvals. So product area match is again where we kind of have those conversations with the candidate to say, okay, what are your interests? What are you vibing with? Here's what we have offering, here's who's hiring, and see if those things meld. Again, that can take a little bit of time. I believe in my interview process, that took about a month, to be honest. But as that time was going, I was meeting with different groups, kind of feeling that out, and I landed in core, which was perfect for me because I like building things for people, and be able to build things for my coworkers just was a perfect match for me. So those are the kind of things, it takes a little bit of time, but that happens, final approvals, and then what we're all waiting for is the offer. So that's kind of the flow. Again, I don't know, Ant, if you want to talk about your interview process, I know we're talking from a technical standpoint, but how did yours kind of fit into this?
Yeah, I'd say, because I'm non-tech, a lot of my focus was on the team attributes and leadership. I had a lot of interviews around those. So you can expect, in this case, team leadership, or what we call Googliness, and then it's about role-related knowledge. So that's probably where the technical skills come in. How knowledgeable are you about the role, about your skills that you're bringing to the table, the value that you can bring. So it's important to focus on both the attribute side and the role-related knowledge. And when it comes to the attributes and leadership, in my opinion, a lot of these questions that come in are focused on behavioral questions. Like, tell me about a time this happened. Tell me about a time when, or give me an example, or I'll speak about the last one here. But when someone asks you, tell me about a time, a great framework to use to respond back to those questions is the STAR method. How many of you are familiar with the STAR method? And we had some this morning. Good, that's great. Situation, task, action, result. And so that's an interviewer wanting to learn more about you. It's an opportunity for you to provide context, the task you task yourself with, the action you took, the result. And what I like to add, for those of you that are here this morning, is what you learned. So this was the end result, and more importantly, here's what I learned. I learned X, Y, Z, I learned how to solve this challenge for the future. Now I know, kind of explaining what you've learned to the interviewer helps a lot. So these are behavioral questions. Imagine that is actually a situational question. This is a kind of a forward-looking question where you might not have gone through that experience before. But even if it's a forward-looking question, such as, imagine you had to open up a donut shop in a new market. How would you do it, and what would you consider? That could be a question. Well, you've never maybe opened up a donut shop in a new market, but it's an opportunity to recall on a past experience where maybe you've worked on something similar. And maybe it was a capstone project, or a personal project, where maybe you were consulting a friend who was opening up a small store or a virtual store online. Recalling from that and kind of using some of those examples onto a forward-looking question could also be beneficial. So the main part here is to think about, is it a behavioral or a situational that's more forward-looking, and making that distinction. Some tips for success: absolutely, listen carefully, rephrase the question, and ask clarifying questions. This is really important. Why is this so important? Can anyone tell me why this might be important here? Why is it important to listen carefully, to rephrase the question, and ask clarifying questions? Yes?
Because you might answer the wrong question.
You might answer the wrong question, yeah.
There might be a specific thing they're looking for.
There might be a specific thing you're looking for, yeah, one more.
It shows that you're taking effort to interact with the interviewer rather than just talking at them.
Yes, and that's a big one, great point there. You're not just quick to jump the gun and try to answer the question and try to actually like say what they're looking for. No, you're asking clarifying questions. You are being attentive to what they're asking. You're reconfirming, is this what the question is? And ultimately, it helps you really identify, okay, what are the best steps for me to answer this question? So if you're confused in anything, ask clarifying questions. Jonathan was speaking a lot about this earlier. The interviews are a lot about collaboration. Okay, these interviewers, they're Googlers, they're all employees, they're all people, and they want to hire great people. So they're not here to scare anyone or ask you really tough questions. Its question could be really simple, and it's up to you to really provide that STAR method example. So, again, great, ask clarifying questions here, explain your thought process. Jonathan spoke about this earlier. Jonathan, you have anything to add on this end about explaining your thought process?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's, similar to what you're saying. And it will definitely be more important when we get to the technical aspect of things, but even in the leadership or team attributes, I think it's very important, we wanna know kind of how you think, not just what, again, what your end result is, how you got there. Again, for anyone, again, there's a lot of math majors, obviously, there are a lot of people who do math, you know, proofs. There's a reason you did learn how to do proofs, not because I wanna see how you got there. What did you base it on? How did you think of that? What past experience have you pulled from to help you answer this question? And I think that's very, very good sign that, again, you're not just, you know, giving me some pre-rehearsed answer. I mean, obviously part of interviewing is you know, you prepare and all that, but again, it's the person you're talking to, you wanna interact with them, you wanna explain to them how you think, you want to leave that impression on them. And the only way to leave the impression of your uniqueness is to explain that to them. Explain how you think differently than the next guy thinks. But if you're just giving them the same question as the next guy gave, then it kind of come off a little flat. So I definitely love the thought process and what it says there, expecting that follow-up question. If you're gonna say something like, oh wait, explain that, go further. You know, and because I wanna take that further. I wanna keep you on your thinking. Again, what makes you you? So expect those things to be ready for that. And mostly because of the last point, because interviewing is a two-way street. Again, we're gonna talk about that a lot during this presentation, is that, again, it's a collaboration. It's me and you. We're in this space together. This interview is happening to the both of us, not just you. I didn't show up to put you under the knife and be like, all right, you better do this. It's really like, okay, let's get to know each other. Let me hear how you think. Let me see how you solve problems, and let's work. Oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. You know, and that's saying, so you have to, as well as I'm trying to get to know you, having those thoughtful questions and having those things come back at me, I can also come to you and say, I'm glad you asked that, because this is how we think about this at this company, or this is what we do here, and that fits perfectly with who you are. That's kind of what you want to get out of these.
And what I would add here, before we go on to the next slide, is by you explaining your thought process, it helps the interviewer take notes on how you think, how you're problem solving. And that's huge. You wanna know, is this person a problem solver? Can they get shit done? Are they a great team lead? Are they responsible? These are all things that the interviewer is thinking of. This is almost like their interviewing rubric. So the more you can explain your thought process, even if you're confused in the moment, you can call that out. You say, right now I'm confused between this and this, so let me break this down. And you start speaking through how you're breaking down your confusion, how you resolve your confusion, then how you continue responding back to the question. Whatever is asked, make sure you answer the question that's asked. Oftentimes, candidates may ramble, and wherever they're interviewing, so just be sure to answer the question. And the thoughtful question you recommend is very important. Ask a really few thoughtful questions at the end of your interview. The better questions you ask, the better the interviewer will perceive you, right? If you ask a question like, what's your day-to-day like, or what makes a candidate successful in this role, that's like a softball question. If you really bring a tough question to the interviewer, letting them know you know the industry, you know the work in and out, and maybe you call on one of your experiences and kind of put it in their face, that makes the interviewer have to really think. That's a great question right there, and really kind of raises your value, I would say.
Awesome. So that was for our full time. We're gonna talk a little about internships. So where are my first, second, and third year students? We're here, we're rocking. I love it. All right. So we still want some internships, right? So a similar process. The one thing you'll probably know is the fewer amount of interviews, which I'm sure is making people in here happy. But the process is very similar. You have the online coding assessment, and then you have your technical interviews. So for intern level interviews, we don't do that leadership and teamwork interview. We just go straight to the technical interviews. Again, I was talking to someone earlier and said, usually those interviews, those problems that you get in technical interviews will be a little bit easier than you would if it was a full-time role. I have some examples we'll go through later, kind of showing you that difference. But again, you want to prepare the same, you want to be ready for those, and we're going to teach you how to get ready for those. And then project search, which again is very similar to the product area match, but this is more focused on intern projects that have been predefined and where you fit best in that, and then obviously where we're all trying to get is the offer. Before we move on, yes, perfect.
For the coding assignment, what it looks like, do you do it before or how?
Yes,
how
it's usually delivered like as a link, so again, it'll say, hey, here's your coding assessment, by the time you start this, you have X amount of time to finish this, and then it closes out and it gets sent back, so it's one of those things. Again, that's totally on your own time, so no one's watching you do this, it's kind of like your own time, online assessment, you have X amount of time to do that, versus technical interviews, which will either be virtual or in person, but it's usually virtual, where I, will log on with you and take you through the process. I think we're gonna go over that a little bit in a bit, so we'll go more into detail on how that will operate. But the actual technical interviews is like a monitored and collaborative experience versus the online assessment, which is just a solo experience. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, so I wanna ask, like, once you make it through the 2 technical interviews as an intern, and you make it to the project search portion of the process, are you guaranteed to be put on a project, or is it still possible to not get that offer at that point?
I would say that, I wouldn't say guaranteed. I would say there's a high likelihood though. Again, obviously they have an interest in you at that point. Again, I made the joke earlier about like project search is kind of like speed dating. Like you're going into these things and there's again, for an intern project, it's someone like me who has written an intern project out, I defined it and said, hey, Google, I have this project that I would really love an intern to work on. They say, cool, and I'm going out to the pool of qualified engineers and trying to find someone who, again, we kind of vibe with. Hey, this is what I'm looking for, this and that. Are you willing to do that? Again, so it's a little bit of both. Because again, I know everybody is very interested in just landing an internship, but if I signed you up for something for 14 weeks that you hate, that would be just as bad. So I would say high likelihood that you end up matching, but I would not want to say here say guaranteed for sure, but very high likelihood behind you. Sorry.
Do you have any specific examples of questions to ask the interviewer, or is it situation specific?
That's a good question. Ant, do you wanna? You're probably better at this.
That question?
Do you have any examples of specific questions to ask the interviewer after the interview's over, or is that situation specific?
That's a great question. I'll tell you generally my experience, and it may be very much situational. At the end of the interview, it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the role, learn about the industry or perhaps the challenges that the team's facing, and also bring in your own experience, your own context. An example could be sharing something about the work that you've been doing recently, or maybe it's a project or a class you've taken and how it relates to the role that you're applying to. And perhaps bringing a question to the interviewer around how would you solve a challenge like this? Or I'm experiencing something similar to what this team does. I'm curious, what's your outlook for your team in the next 6 months, given the challenges in the industry right now?
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think that's the best thing. I wouldn't, like I said, I don't want to give you like, this is the question, like, I'm not trying to do the clickbait, this is the question that will solve it. That's not gonna happen. Again, just what's important to you? What do you care about? Ask that question, because I said this earlier, but nerds like to talk, right? Like, we like to talk about what we do or what we care about and all the weird things. So just ask those kind of questions that you care about and see if it resonates. More than likely it will. Just come outside yourself. Any last questions before we move on? We're gonna dive in a little deeper into each of these topics, but just want
Since you guys are different fields, how do you feel like you guys are similar in terms of getting work done?
it like day to day.
Well, like in general, like from an overview of like year to year.
That's a great question. I kind of want to save that for the end because I just want to stay on everything, but I don't want to answer that question. Don't let me forget. Okay. Okay. All right. We'll go into preparing for interviews. So, again, we talked about this about the online coding assessment. So again, you have this coding assessment that will be at the beginning. You have a time limit of 90 minutes. Again, you can practice as many times as you want before the deadline. Obviously, again, the big part of that is integrity matters. Hopefully, you're being honest as you are using online assessment. Because again, it's not just something that we're using as a stopgate, this is also your opportunity to see where you sit in the process. Again, I know it's very tempting to use outside help, especially when no one's watching you, but there's a reason why this is here. So use your integrity, don't use outside resources. Make sure that you know, do this to the best of your ability so you can see where you are, we can see where you are, and go from there. And then it consists of 2 coding problems. And there you go. This is within 7 days of receiving the link. So 7 days, you complete it, you can practice, and you have 90 minutes once you start. Go ahead.
For the practice, some like assessment sites will just give you like a test question to just like figure out the platform. Is the practice like actual questions that could be asked in a similar way? Not like exactly, but like still questions that would like jog your mind.
I would say it would give you a good sense. Again, I don't control what questions are asked, so I don't wanna say one for one, but I would just say the idea of the practice would give you a sense of, like I said, how to use the platform, number one, you know, what kind of questions you should be planning on getting, but I would usually lean on the fact that online coding sessions are usually on the easier side of things, at least for internship level. It's not gonna be, you know, the hardest of hard questions for all my elite coders in the room, but again, it would be something that, again, we can see where you are. If I'm asking you to solve 2 questions in 90 minutes, that should kind of give you a gauge of the level, that makes sense, right?
Is the online assessment platform something like standardized like HackerRank, or is it like something proprietary? Or if you don't have the answer, that's
I
fine.
believe it's proprietary, if I remember correctly. It's not gonna be that. It's not gonna be HackerRank, I can tell you. It's something that's Google specific, yes. Cool. Well, yes, the most important thing I would say, related to this is you choose your coding language ahead of time. I wouldn't freak out too much about this. Again, for me, I tell the story often that I did my everything related to interviewing for Google in C#. No one at Google is using C# to code. That's just what I knew coming from my old last experience at Lockheed Martin. So I just did what felt comfortable, and no one had a problem with that. Again, as long as you can code, complete. And again, someone asked me earlier about pseudocode. It can't be pseudocode. It has to be real code, real libraries, real solutions. As long as it works, that's all that matters, regardless of what programming language you use. So if you're better in Python and anything else, use Python. If you're better in Go or C++, more power to you. Like, those are the things that are completely up to you to do. So don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed into one particular language. Okay, so there you go. So specifics for the virtual interview. Again, you have to actually type your solutions, you have to actually code into the interviewing platform. Again, it's very important to make sure your equipment is working ahead of time. I'm big on that. You only have a certain amount of time in an interview, I believe 45 minutes total. Yeah, that's right. 45 minutes total. The last thing you want is for 10 of those minutes to go to trying to get your microphone working. So make sure, you know, you can use your microphone is working. You have pen and paper ready. If you would like to scribble notes, I'm big on that, especially with like graph-based or tree-based problems. I go straight to my paper and write out the question. I'll just hold it up to the camera if I have to. That's your business. If you want to do it in the IDE, you're also able to do that if you're better at commenting kind of your thought process. Again, this is up to you. Again, a big part, big part is sharing your thoughts out loud. Again, rubber duck, like use your interviewer. Again, I'm not going to give you the answer as an interviewer, but I am going to listen, like we said, to your thought process. I can't listen to your thought process if you're thinking about it in your head and keeping it in your head. So if you come up with an idea or have a solution that's about to take you all the way left, that will give me an opportunity to say, are you sure about that? Why are you thinking that way? This and that. And then that's your opportunity to be like, whoa, okay, he's asking me. Maybe I should think twice about this before I spend the next 45 minutes doing the wrong thing. Does that make sense? And then, yeah, please don't search for that question. Again, integrity. I think, yeah, sorry.
So, you said you did yours in C#, correct?
Yes.
Can you choose what language the idle's gonna be in? Cause right now I'm seeing it's in a Java right now.
Mhm.
So do you just choose what language you wanna write it in, then it just automatically does it, or can you just write your code in any language you have?
I I believe, again, it's something you would set up with your recruiter ahead of time.
Gotcha.
So again, this wouldn't be something hopefully on the day you're figuring out. But yes, it'd be, can I do my interview in this programming language? Yes, especially for the, cause you see here, there is a drop down here. So for the coding assessment, it might be one thing, but for the in-person interview, for sure, make sure you set that ahead of time. Cause we'll more than likely match a interviewer that can handle that programming language. Again, for me, it was a little bit harder, cause they had to find people within Google that do C# to the level to be able to, you know, if I use a library that doesn't exist, they can call me out on it or something like that. You see what I'm saying? So definitely set that up beforehand. Coding assessment looks like you're able to choose from that drop down. So again, just be prepared, but ask ahead of time. Please talk to your recruiter. You don't want to get to that assessment and, oops, I can't use, you know, I don't know, F#, you know, whatever you're trying to use. Yes.
I know that you said you can use any programming language, but is there a preferred one?
Not that I know of, but there is one I don't think so. Again, it's really about, again, what you feel the most comfortable with. The last thing you wanna do is be getting into a syntax problem in your brain. Whatever comes the most easy to you, that you're not gonna be worried about what the library is called or syntax is, use that one. Because again, the problem will be hard enough, you don't wanna be fighting with your own, you know, is it size or count, you know, we don't do that.
For like the like virtual interview that isn't recruiter based, like does like commenting like matter for like the score of our like solution? I know like, you know, passing test cases or not, but like is the code like looked over, like the quality, like how it's written, like so long as like the runtime is like fine, but
I wouldn't say comments are important. That I don't think they gave us any direction on that, but I did say with pretty good certainty that, because again, this is a short amount of time, right? So even if you did comment your code, you don't have that much time to be that thorough, and hopefully your code isn't so all over the place. Like there's such thing as like self-documenting code sometimes. Again, it should be clear enough that if I looked at it, it works. But again, I think for most of these online coding assessments, is more in that, like you said. Does it build, does it pass the test cases, did it fit this runtime, and that's kind of really the thing, is less of the other stuff. In person, that's where you can kind of get into more like, even code quality would be more like, is this the optimal solution versus the brute force? Even in those cases, because again, 35 minutes, I'm not expecting you to have a fully documented out, perfect algorithm, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, then I've already answered, but I guess what's going into your mind if someone's there and you're interviewing them, they're writing out their code, what are they looking for per se? Are you just looking for someone to speed run this thing, or are you looking for someone to actually write it down, take their time?
Yeah.
Or are you just mostly looking for someone who, even though they may or may not be able to write down the code, they're at least able to adequately explain how they got to a conclusion?
Yeah, man, I'll just answer your question with a story. So I'm gonna break the myth that you have to answer all your problems to completion. Again, I did get hired in 2022. That's a different era. But and back then I had 5 technical interviews at that. Now it was only 3, so you're a much better spot than I was. But I had 5, and I split them up into 2 days. The first day I answered all 3. The second I only answered 1, which was fine. But the problem that got me, the reason I think everything still worked out fine was exactly what I was saying, was the sharing my thoughts out loud. Because there gets to a point with certain problems at a certain level, as anyone who's done lead code in here knows, sometimes you can get wrapped around the wheel. You can talk yourself in a corner, or you can find that edge case, 30 minutes into a 35-minute code, and you're like, dang, now it's gonna take me 10 minutes to fix it, but I know how to fix it. But instead, I don't have that 10 minutes to write it, but I have 5 minutes to explain it. And that's exactly what had happened to me. So I was talking to the person, hey, this is what I'm thinking, I'm solving this using a try, or I'm doing this and that, DFS, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I just realized that example you gave me wouldn't work with this, so I need to do this. And I started explaining, hey, this is what I would do to get myself out of the scenario. I don't have enough time. Is that okay? And he's like, yeah, I see where your thoughts at. I see where your head's at. I can see your computer science skills and where it needs to be. And the rest of it is kind of, again, the rest of it is kind of, I want to say, because coding is important, but that's kind of procedural. Again, the main thing we're trying to see, and we keep saying this over and over, how do you think? Can you find the solution? If I give you enough time when you get there, or will you just sit there and kind of like, I actually don't know. I don't know how to use hash math, so I'm stuck. You see what I'm saying? Like, so it gets to a point. So it's not, to answer your question, it's not just, what I'm looking for is how you think, can you apply these data structures and algorithms to get yourself to the solution I'm looking for, regardless if we can
If there's
write it
something I
off.
could add to, it's how you're explaining what you're explaining. So taking your time, being very methodical, not just rambling and kind of confusing yourself, but the last thing you wanna do is confuse the interviewer. Take a pause, take your time, really explain thoroughly what you would do to solve if you had more time, what your plan would be.
I saw some hands. I will work my way back here, yo.
Did you have the opportunity to design your own test cases? And if so, was that part of your interviewing process?
We're gonna talk about that, but I tend to. When I do my, when I'm getting interviewed, I tend to, in my design a solution phase, kind of, like, that's why I get my pen and paper out, and like, okay, if this thing works the way I think it does, it will handle this case they didn't ask me about. So I do tend to test, that's definitely a important part of the process that we'll go over.
In the technical interview process for interns, is system design tested?
No. It will be more, even in most full-time entry-level ones, system design wouldn't be in there. That's more when you go senior staff level, where we'll get into more like, again, how, load balance this thing, you see what I'm saying?
So it's kind of like what you were saying before, but what's the priority of like runtime versus getting the correct answer all the time? Like with a greedy algorithm versus something that would be much longer in runtime but always output the correct solution?
Again, we'll go through this, but I think what I always say is definitely, if you know the brute force way of doing it, explain it in 60 seconds. But again, I'm spoiling the rest of the thing, but before you start, actual interview with me or with anybody from Google, you're not gonna be able to start coding until you explain what you're about to do. So regardless of, if you tell me the brute force solution, you say, yeah, I'm gonna use 2 for loops and this and that and the other thing, I'm like, great. You have a better way? And if you can't explain that to me, then we're gonna stay right here. You see, it's one of those things, until it might get to the point where like, just write what you have, this and that, you really don't have anything. But those are kind of I would say what you know, but think of optimization. And sometimes talking about the brute force can get you to optimization. You can say, yeah, if I go around the loop twice, wait, I can use a stack here, or something like, you see what I'm saying? Like, those are kind of the things. That's why talking out loud is so important. Okay.
So when you're dealing with like multiple candidates who probably explained the problem well and got an optimal solution, how would you choose one candidate like among the others?
Again, I don't choose anybody. I want to make that very clear. We are not recruiters or like hiring managers. At least not me. But I would say it's more at the end of it. We would hand in our notes on, again, what we saw of you. It's less us making the decision on who to hire.
In fact, the interviewer won't choose anyone. They're taking notes, they're evaluating your performance, they're evaluating your problem-solving skills, they're trying to learn about maybe your teamwork skills, your communication skills. They're taking down notes, so you may see an interviewer like look down and maybe be typing as you're typing. That they will then pass those notes on to a separate team who will then evaluate your performance, and then that separate team will then base their recommendation to another team, and that team will then make a decision. So there's a lot of processes in place to also remove any biases. So if an interviewer is like, oh, I like this person a lot, I'm gonna hire him, versus someone who's like, oh, I don't like this person's how they dress today, or whatever biases there are, which we do a lot of trainings to remove those biases. For that reason, there's a lot of processes in place where there's a separate team that will review the notes, the performance, and if that passes through, there's another team that then reviews the offer stage on what offer will actually be presented.
I'm gonna move on to this next part, but on that, just something that sparked me, and I tell you this all the time. Your question is valid, because you're thinking, okay, how can I separate myself from the next person? But what is more valid is just you worrying about you. I'm big on this. Again, this is all about you bringing your best version of yourself that day. and not really worrying about, okay, well, I probably solved it this in 30 minutes, but the next person solved it in 25. You can't do anything about that. But what you can focus on is just making sure you're better today than yesterday. So that's more where I think. Just think, you're in here. Put those blinders on. You're focused on your problem. Who cares how fast anyone else is? That's not, has nothing up to you. And like it was saying, it probably won't help you anyways or help them anyways, because the person who interviewed you is not gonna be the person who made all those other decisions. So just focus on you and you'll be fine. Okay. Some of this I'll be able to speed run because we talked about a lot of this. But again, the virtual interviews, again, is very important. Again, make sure your audio is working. If you need captions or anything accessibility wise, again, please communicate those things to your recruiter. We'll make sure we have things in place for you to help you with that. Again, if you're presenting, please only share the window we want to see. We don't need to see your whole desktop, or both desktops, or 3 desktops, depending on your situation. And again, be authentic, be yourself, relax, it's okay. Again, we're good. I'm here for you. We're interviewing, again, we're interviewing you, but it's a collaborative experience, so bring yourself.
Yeah, and the interviewer's hoping that you do a great job. They're on your side.
Yeah.
They wanna hire great people, and they wanna hopefully not have to interview tons and tons of people because they found the right person right then and there.
Yeah.
Another tip for when you're setting up the camera for the virtual interview, this isn't explained here and might be a little over the board here, over the top, but try to seat the camera to the eye level, kind of where you're at. So like you're not looking down on the screen in the camera, or you're not looking up either. And consider the background of where you're at. Maybe don't interview at a coffee shop, or have like in a quiet room where there's not too many distractions in the back.
Okay. So again, we talked about this a little bit, but this is what you expect in this interview again, as it's kind of broken down. So the interview is 45 minutes total. It's going to be conducted on Google Meet. Again, you'll have that ahead of time. You'll log in, you'll get in there, the interviewer will join the call. And then usually it's broken down in like a 5-minute short introduction. Again, getting to know you, you getting to know me. Hi, my name is Jonathan. I work at Google. Who are you? Tell me about yourself. And again, this is kind of your opportunity to impart some of, again, who you are into the conversation during that introduction before you start coding and all that. During the technical assessment part, it's kind of what I mentioned before. You'll get, maybe 1 or 2 questions of a certain difficulty, and you will be asked to, design a solution, code a solution, test your solution, move on. And after that 35 minutes, you'll have those closing questions where, again, it's that opportunity to kind of impart your personality and what you're curious about.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, don't underestimate, I mentioned this earlier, the importance of the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes of the interview. This is a chance for you to take control of the interview and really set a good precedent. In the technical assessment, you're gonna be asked questions. You have to problem solve in the process that you're thinking through. But at the very beginning, this is your opportunity to share more about yourself. This isn't an opportunity to go through your resume, but kind of how your story has brought you here. I mentioned this earlier today. Consider when they ask about you, when tell me about yourself, explaining your past, your past experiences, what you've been interested in before, the projects you've worked on, and perhaps these things are on your resume, but you're explaining more of like a journey, your future, where you see yourself in the future, your interests, and then your present. So past, future, and present, kind of what's brought you here, and what interests you about the specific role or this company. And of course, the closing questions, it's the opportunity for you to share the value you're bringing by asking thoughtful questions, not the average, what's your work-life balance like, or what makes an employee a great employee. Like, these are things you can Google yourself. You have maybe 2 to 3 questions to ask an interviewer, so make them count. You do your research ahead of time.
I saw some hands, so I want to give them.
Yeah, you answered my question a little bit, but during that short introduction time, can you be expected to go like in depth into previous experiences on your resume or projects? Would you get asked about those there?
I wouldn't even say it's really like, again, we're not gonna say like, all right, well, run out your resume real quick. It's gonna be more, again, just short, I would say mostly informal introduction. So again, if there's something that, again, you're like, hey, something that you want me to know right away, just say that. Again, I'm sure you're already gonna be kind of eyeing the clock anyway, so I doubt like you're gonna over talk it to that extent, and the interviewer is also cognizant of that, so they're not gonna just keep hammering you. Now go in more detail, because they know where they're trying to get, where we're both trying to get. So.
And if you made it to this stage, that means your recruiter already learned a lot about you. but this is an opportunity to share your experience directly with the interviewer. And this should probably take like 30 seconds to 1 minute, sharing your story, kind of what brought you here.
Yeah, elevator pitch, this is that big.
Actually, I have a question for you. What was the best question that you were asked?
You know, it's funny how simple the questions are that they ask, and it's up to the candidate to really provide a lot of context. I interviewed almost 10 years ago, so I can't remember the question that I was asked, but what I do remember is how I prepared. I was very structured with my answers, I was very charismatic, I was myself. Yes, I had some stuff pre-rehearsed, but I showed up just as myself and really try to connect with the interviewer. It was a very simple question. What I tried to focus on was like keywords. What were the keywords that folks in the industry were using? How can I really use the STAR method to share a lot of context of my work? So kind of like boasting a little bit, but within the question that I'm answering, so like it's all good. And really like sharing the context of why the impact that I had was so important, what the result was, and what I learned from that, I think was most important. Because at Google, we want to hire you, not just for one role, but forever. We want to hire you to move around the company. There's lots of internal mobility within the company where one day I might be working in people development, another day I might be working in YouTube marketing. And it's up to me to kind of find that path, work within the company and the guidelines to do that. But that's what we're looking for, someone who's curious, who's a great collaborator, teamwork, who problem solve, is always interested to learn more and to solve challenges, not just for themselves, but for others. So I focused a lot on the STAR method, having my elevator pitch, and ultimately really trying to show like my journey and why I would be such a good fit. Every answer that you have, it's like precious real estate. There's only 35 minutes in a technical interview, so I focus on not rambling. You might have a technical interview, it's very similar. Like how can I use every second to share about my context? Like I want them to know this one thing, so we kind of bring this in my answer while also answering the question that they're asking. Hopefully that's helpful.
Cool. So again, I'm sure people are very interested about this. Again, we're talking about data structured algorithms. Again, for my foundation exam, people who are past it, people who are focused are trying to pass it. These are kind of things that you're hopefully you're already putting your brain to learning or trying to learn. So stay on that for sure. Again, I'm not gonna run down all these. I see your life in your phone, so you already know what to look at. Again, leak code, yeast code. I'm sure there's a million other ones at this point. You know what to do. Go practice. Practice makes perfect. Make sure you learn these and have them. You know, a good efficiency, a good knowledge base on how to approach these problems. Before I move on, again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more, but again, I think I said this to the gentleman up here. Like, I'm big with how I think. I tend to think these forward. Again, I tend to just try to get to the answer. Like, if I know a way to solve a problem, I'm going to start there. Obviously, it's more times than not, it's not going to be the most efficient answer. Again, the for loop, stuff like that are big, but then those give you the opportunity to say, okay, where can I use some of these data structures? That's kind of how I think. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna solve it this way. What data structure can help me? This one. Okay, if I use this data structure, what algorithm can help me? How do those kind of mix together? If I'm doing a DFS, I'm gonna use this. If I'm doing a BFS, I'm gonna use that. You see what I'm saying? Like, those are kind of the thought process you have, where again, just learning these topics and playing with them and practicing them, it will help you kind of take that through. And again, we touched on a lot of this stuff. During this assessment, again, the thing we are looking for is that communication, that collaboration. Again, talking out loud. Don't go silent on this. Again, I know that can be hard, especially when you're coding or you're thinking. Don't go silent on this. Clearly explain your thinking. Work with your interviewer, because again, they're here to collaborate with you. It's not just, this is a two-person experience. Again, we're looking for your knowledge in those data structure algorithms. Can you efficiently problem solve? Can you use them the right way as well? How do you break down these challenges and reason through solutions? That's big. Again, as you have these problems, I'm watching how you solve. I'm watching how you take, oh, I've seen this. Because again, a lot of what people know, like leak code, a lot of those problems are the same problems, just a different way. So how can you relate that back to something you've done, something you know, and then talk about that, and then obviously, can I even understand what you're writing? Or did you write it one correctly? Is it functional? Can I understand it? Are all your, are your variables X and Y, or or do I know what you're doing? Things like that. And then probably the biggest thing is that bottom one, which is we are not trying to like throw out a tricky brain teaser, how like a trick is gonna be something that is relatively, I would say, standard question or standard algorithm, something that's, again, not gonna be like I got you, like, we're not trying to get you, we want you to solve the problem. Like you said, we're really trying to see who you are as a candidate.
You literally have the cheat sheet right here. This is what they're grading you against, what they're assessing. So if you're curious on how do I best answer this, or what are they looking for, this is literally it. Communication, collaboration, your data structures and algorithms, problem solving, analytical skills, and your code understanding.
So yeah, again, this is kind of our considerations, just kind of said a different way, which again is how do you analyze the problem?